So Rick Campbell hired as the head coach of the BC Lions yesterday. And I just don't really understand a lot of things that go on with the CFL and haven't for a long time. Smitty, I think you know what I'm talking about. When Dave Naylor comes on here and says this was a fait accompli 28 days ago when Rick Campbell resigned in Ottawa. And let me say, I don't have a problem with guys getting on the phone and saying, let's work together, similar to what they do in the NBA. But that's tampering if there was ever tampering.
It happened quick. That's all I'll say. It was so quick. And for that to happen so quick, you kind of wonder. But, hey, like you said, things happen. That happens. And you just keep on rolling. Did they get the right guy? Who knows? We'll see. We'll see in a few years. But it happened quick.
Well, in retrospect, with the Riders hiring Chris Jones and his entire staff, what necessarily is wrong with that? Because if just a head coach leaves, like for instance, Ottawa's sitting there holding the bag, Rick Campbell's gone, and his entire staff's still sitting there.
Yeah.
So maybe you clean out all the cupboards and those guys all come to Saskatchewan, then you can start over in Edmonton, which you kind of wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a new coach is going to roll into Ottawa and want his own staff, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And it's the same thing. Like we're sitting here talking to Nick Lewis, and like, what's your future, Nick? I don't know. All the coaches in BC don't know. Like they're going to have meetings and they're going to talk to Rick, and certain guys have been recommended to him for certain jobs, but they just don't know, and that's tough for them because your head coach wants to have his own coaches in place, and I think that's a little bit of the issue in Montreal when you've hired a head coach in Kahari Jones, but you don't have a general manager, and we saw that general manager head coaching conflict become a problem in Ottawa. Right? If you're not on the same page, finding players that fit your system and knowing what kind of team that's going to be successful, it could be an issue. So that's going to be a little bit of the dance that Montreal has to go through too.
Marcel, he'll get it going. I know that. I worked with him, and so many people are saying, now it's up to Marcel. Marcel, let this go, let that go. I know why Marcel does stuff. He does it so he's doing things properly. He did something to get the cap. And I'm sure he's thinking, what, I probably should have tried as best as I could to get Trevor Harris, to get the quarterback, because they had quarterback problems all year. And, people make mistakes. I think that might have been a mistake that he made. But, again, those guys, their work ethic is top notch, and they're going to get it back. It's the nature of the beast as far as coaching and the whole, when I signed up, I knew. I've lived in Vancouver. I lived in Hamilton. I've been here now, and that's what happens. You're hired to be fired, and it's going to happen. And when it happened to me the first time, it was devastating. But that's just the way it is in this game of football.
Kind of get used to it.
You have to.
You do.
Yeah. You love what you do, and you know that okay, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be there. I know coaches that they've been all over the place. Joe Pau. He's been just everywhere, and and his family is down in the San Diego area. That's not easy. It's not an easy thing, but they love what they do. That's what they do. That's, they're not bricklayers. They're not going to go get a plumbing job. They're coaches. And that's just that's what they do.
Well, they're not getting rich. They're getting rich with experiences and hopefully get a ring along the way.
You're exactly right.
But they're not getting rich at all. And that's why I try to reserve judgment on a lot of guys in the CFL. For instance, Marcel Desjardins. I really only say I judge people how they treat me, and Marcel has been nothing but first class to me all the time. As a matter of fact, at the CFL GM meetings, there's been times where he's pulled me aside. He's like, hey, probably telling me what he wants me to know or crafting the message. But who cares? At least he's telling me something.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with Marcel. Yet Henry Burris does. Yet Trevor Harris does.
Yeah.
It's funny with Hank, by the way, that he would be so upset at Marcel Desjardins. How would you like to be Kevin Glenn, who was selected in the expansion draft, and then thrown overboard for Henry Burris back in 2014?
That was tough.
That was an ugly situation. Hank didn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody loves Kevin, and when something like that happens to a good guy, that's you're outraged. You're like, what the? It's one of those things.
Oh, it is kind of tough though, because the GMs.
But it's football. It's football.
Yeah,
and that's the reality of the beast.
Great game, crappy business.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they're doing it. Here's my point on Marcel. He's done everything for the franchise. He doesn't do everything for Marcel. there is a difference.
Absolutely.
Like in the case of Roy Shivers, he was trying to advance political movements. He was trying to do things that weren't necessarily about the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Yeah.
They were about Roy and his beliefs to the detriment of the team in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Marcel Desjardins is not that guy.
Yeah.
You know, and I would say the same thing about Eric Tillman. You talk. Great example was Chris Getzlaff was a free agent after the 07 Grey Cup. He was on the practice roster. I believe. I don't think he played in the 07 Grey Cup, but Tillman said to him after the 07 season, "You resign here for 08 or I'm not giving you a Grey Cup ring." Mm-hmm. Kind of dirty, really. Yeah. But it was still what was best for the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Yeah.
That's how they do business. Is that dirty business, would you say? That's leverage?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's business.
Yeah.
But I say Marcel, again, Hank's mad at the way it ended for him, for Trevor Harris. We didn't have a problem with the way it ended for Kevin Glenn, so Henry had a spot. And in the end, Marcel's just doing this to have a winning program or to lose Trevor Harris and Greg Ellingson and Sir Vincent Rogers and these guys. It's to fit under the salary cap. Goes back to what we were saying earlier. Not everybody's going to get the money they think they're owed.
Yeah. Everybody thinks they're better than they are. I've known that since I coached Pee Wee football and went through the ranks up until the pros. Everybody thinks they're better, but everybody thinks that they should be paid more money.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah.
And so for Marcel, I mean, he's in a tough spot now too because it's time to show that his philosophy is one that's going to work.
Absolutely.
Right? And I mean, we have no reason to believe that it won't. He's had so much success in Ottawa, and so I believe that, you kind of have to trust him, but whoever they put in, as their head coach better be on the same page.
Well, I think the first thing is get a solid quarterback. They have a lot of guys there that have played in a Grey Cup and won. But as far as quarterback was concerned, between all the guys that they had in there, they weren't doing it. So that's the first thing that he's going to, he'll go after Fatty or somebody else that's going to be able to go in there and be a first string quarterback.
Are you surprised at the polls, our polls, that say Jeremiah Masoli is a runaway most coveted free agent quarterback in the CFL? Because for me, I guess because he's proven.
Yeah.
Arbuckle would be my guy.
Yeah, Arbuckle's up there, but Masoli's. I mean, think about it. Before he got hurt, I mean, he was hotter than heck. I mean, he was, and I'll tell you, I am surprised at that. I went in and I saw him play with Edmonton against BC in the preseason a few years ago, and he was horrible. Like I scratched my head, because I seen him play at college, and there we go again. You see him in college. That doesn't mean he's going to come in and be a good pro, but boy, he sure has developed, and he's one of the better ones. Big thing is how's he coming back from the knee? He should be okay. He should come back, but I think Masoli would probably be the top, but Arbuckle, I think he's. It depends on the injury. It really does.
Well, it does, and we went through an interesting year, and in the CFL. The quarterback is so key, so critical. Important, especially with just really two downs to make things happen. And the Mike Riley thing, okay, it hasn't worked out yet, but they're still working. And Rick Campbell's going to try and correct that. And Kelly Bates on that offensive line, I'm assuming he's going to be back to run that group. But you look at what Cody Fajardo did, Dane Evans did, Arbuckle did. I wonder if you're going to see a lot of GMs thinking, wait a second. We don't need to spend all this money on a quarterback. Let's work on this youth movement and just get good guys in place and roll with a young guy because there was so much success this year. Is that an anomaly? Young quarterbacks can come in and have success pretty quickly? Or is that going to be something that's going to be more of a trend in the CFL?
I've watched this game for a long time, and this has been the craziest year with guys going in second-string quarterbacks. And I've seen that where guys have gone in second-string quarterbacks and they don't see the field. Whether it's lack of experience or maybe they just will never.
All the time.
Yeah, but exactly, all the time. This year, it was just bang, bang, quarterback down. Guy goes in. He can drop back. He can look. He sees the field. He hits the windows. And it was just so exciting this year with regards to Canadian football.
Except in Toronto.
Bethel did some decent things.
Those 400-yard games back to back.
He was leading.
But guys.
No.
I love the chat.
Yeah.
McLeod to reality.
Yeah, McLeod Bethel Thompson, last I looked, led the league in touchdown passes.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But how many times did you see him live? I watched him in Touchdown Atlantic live. You have to be a consistent thrower.
Yep, absolutely.
You can't have 4 good ones and 2 bad ones.
Yep.
And that's him.
Yeah.
He's not consistent enough to be a CFL pro quarterback. He's just not. I know he's a great guy. I've met him. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't be my quarterback, let's put it that way. Oh, yeah. And clearly he's not Toronto's quarterback either. You need to be consistent throughout.
Yeah.
And I don't care about the touchdown passes. Brian Eitenauer writes in on the Facebook wall and he says, "Hey, Rod, this new director of player personnel for the Riders we hired from Calgary, was he still with Calgary or not? What does this say about Paul Jones? Any change for him, or is this just another helper? What can you tell us about this guy? Craig might know more about him." I hope you do, because I don't know anything about the guy. Is it Kyle Carson?
Kyle Carson.
I don't know anything about this guy. I believe the Riders have yet to even announce it. 3downnation.com broke the news over the weekend. Do you know anything about him? Because I couldn't pick him out of a lineup.
I've obviously met him. I've watched film with him in Cincinnati when we were down scouting the NFL in the guts of the stadium. Talked with him. Good kid. He actually called me for advice a while back, and this was before. This was when he was, getting further into his career. He seems like a good kid. I have no idea, his skills. I don't know if he knows football or anything. I know he's a good kid. And with regards to the Riders, Paul Jones is going to be Paul Jones. Paul Jones is going to do his job, and he's going to scour from coast to coast, primarily in the South, and he's going to be looking for players, and that's what he'll do. And then Kyle, I would imagine he'll probably be getting into some of the Canadian stuff and doing NFL and things like that. So there's enough work for both those guys.
Well, what did Luke tell us at lunch yesterday at Ballers? Paul Jones has the best job in football.
He does.
Sits at home, tries out and scouts, and sends his notes up to the Riders. It used to be the Eskimos for 20 years.
Well, Eskimos, Winnipeg. I mean, he's done it. And you're right. He has had the best job. He lives not far from Mobile, Alabama, and he puts thousands and thousands of miles on the car, and he gets to see a lot of football players. And when you get to see a lot of football players, you're going to find them. The more I saw, I know that I could, hey, let's get some players up. I know that I could do that. And he's been at the top of the game for many, many years. Cal Murphy just loved him. And, they've got a good one there. And we'll see what happens with regards to Cal.
And it's so different putting on the miles like you did and clearly Paul's doing to see players live. I mean, with all the access to television, you think you can just watch the highlights, watch the tape, watch them on TV. It's not quite the same, is it?
I am a huge proponent of going to practice, going to games to see a guy live. It's, you may miss something. You will miss something if you're just watching, TV or if you're watching tape, there's, you can get a real good look. You have to have tape. There's no doubt about it, because then you get to watch it over and over again. But I love to get there. I can stand beside a guy. I can see how tall he is. I can see, his frame, what type of a body he has, and then and it's a whole. All that goes into your report with regards to, and then you talk to the trainers, you talk to the equipment guys, if you can. Sometimes you just don't have that access, but a lot of times you do, and you get the whole ball of wax, and you put that in, and and then you can make a grade, and those grades are critical.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.